Good morning. You've joined Winning at Life. I'm your host, Gregory Ricks. We've been doing this for a long time, bringing this show to you for better than 15 years now. And it's always a great time on Saturday to learn, taking this time out, getting that cup of coffee. I've already a couple cups in this morning, and to find out what's going on in the financial world and get some tips about improving the financial aspect of your life. I am your host, Gregory Ricks. Show is Winning at Life with Gregory Ricks. If you want more information about us, you can go to the website, gregoryricks.com. We're streaming the show over on our YouTube channel and our Facebook pages as well. Well, the Winning at Life Facebook page, at probably one of the breaks, I'll also share that, as I normally do, with my personal page, Gregory Ricks, and the firm's page, Gregory Ricks and Associates. The Total Wealth Authority Advisors and Retirement Strategies. On the first hour here, in this hour, we have Dwayne Stein with us to kind of, and there's a lot to talk about because there's a lot of things being talked about in the news, media, about getting help on, and sometimes is it even to change the thinking of how do you get into one of the best opportunities you have. And what's great about America is you can buy real estate and it goes up over time. And I would say, from my opinion, in most cases, it goes up in value over time. But you've got to also make some correct decisions in doing so. But it's a tremendous opportunity, and it's a part of your overall wealth building. You know, I don't think that you should only create wealth by investing in stocks and bonds and annuities. I think having a home, having ownership, having property is a part of that equation. But also, just want to share with you before I bring Dwayne on, there's different ways to reach out to us, and email is an important one. If you have a question, thoughts, want to start a conversation, info@gregoryricks.com. There's a chat box at the website, gregoryricks.com. And the office number, no matter where in the United States you live, you can reach out to us for help, 504-832-9200, and that goes for our offices in the New Orleans area, the Gulf Coast of Mississippi. We have a Gulfport office, and the North Shore of the New Orleans area, Mandeville, there's an office as well. But we work with people across the country because of technology, Zoom, and all those things that it entails enables you to move forward. But over at gregoryricks.com, there's a great resource, and that's our news blog where we post up relevant articles that I read and we talk about on the show. So without further ado, let's welcome Dwayne Stein. Hey, Dwayne, how are you today?
Fantastic, Gregory. Great to be with you again.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you, and this is actually a good time to have you on with so many things being talked about in the news. We've got the Fed that also recently dropped the interest rate another quarter point. The market's kind of worried going forward about whether or not, because of lack of data, whether or not we'll get one more quarter point drop. I think we will. But the Fed doesn't call me up and ask me my thoughts.
Right.
But there is worry about whether or not that's going to happen, and I kind of think it needs to. So tell us what your thoughts are from
I,
interest rate standpoint.
yeah, I think what the Fed being the government now shut down being over with. I think now it turns to what data haven't we gotten. Gregory, I hope you're right. I'm a little bit in a little different. I guess I would say. What do they call it? Like I'm in a different group here on. I I feel like maybe they're gonna stand pat, but gosh, I hope you're right, Bob. I really do. I just think I don't think they're getting enough data. I think this shutdown will be an easy. Hey, we didn't get what we needed to be able to see it, right? To be able to make a good informed decision. So I think they're going to hold pat on that. And what we're seeing right now, Gregory, I could tell you over the last couple weeks is it's ever since really he came out and said he was not sure if he was going to cut in December or not. We've seen the rates, and again, you and I talk about this all the time. You can't time the market, but we've seen the rates trending up a tad. I mean, look, a month ago, the rates were 6.19 on a 30, and now they're at 6.38 right now. So when you hear that over a month, you go, oh, my gosh, that sounds like quite a bit, but it's going up little by little, right? Every week is 5-8 basis points, but that 30-year has creeped up a tad. And now it's still low, and it's comparable to earlier this year, but we've seen it creep up, and I think it's just the uncertainty is why right now the 10-year Treasury, stuff like that, there's a lot of things. There's just a lot of uncertainty, so we're seeing the rates creep up a tad.
So what we've seen in conversation is one of the things that kind of surprised me, and I'm going to ask you to state this because you kind of know. What is the average age of the first-time home buyer now? I was kind of surprised at this stat recently.
Yeah, well, the first-time home buyers, late 30s. The median age now of a home buyer is up to like 59 years old. It's crazy, right?
When you first time median?
Yeah, first-time home buyers up in the 30s. Yeah, it's crazy.
Well,
it's crazy.
We need to help folks change that.
Correct.
I don't quite understand.
Yeah, and
why it's being put off.
I agree, and I think that it's an affordability thing. I think I think what we've dealt with over the last couple years, Gregory, is the old FOMO, right? People feel like you and I have bought houses for years, and if you go back through historical times, you're looking. I mean, a 6-7% mortgage rate is pretty much the norm. But when you throw in those 2, 3s and 4%, it becomes where people think that's the norm. And I think the holdout now for this and is causing folks to just wait. And, maybe student loan debt. There's probably a lot of factors. Now, our market here, Gregory, I don't see that because I think for us, while affordability is an issue everywhere, my average age is first time home buyer is not that, right? We're more in the late 20s, which is I think I'm a lot glad I don't have to wait 10 years to help everybody else out for sure.
Yeah, I was just thinking back. I was probably first time buyer in my late 20s, but I had started well before then thinking about it. I didn't have college debt, and I don't know that, gosh, I'm 65 now, so we're going back several decades there, but even thinking about borrowing money and such, that wasn't on my radar, but knowing that I wanted to have continuing education after high school, and one of the things I did was join the Army. So I kind of, because of being in the military, I had certain things that helped me with that. And even friends, like I remember one of my friends, Gary, he said, like, how are you doing this? Because I'm having to do these different side jobs and all to get through, and you don't seem like you have to do as much. And I said, hey, the military's helping me
Yeah.
pay for this as I go. And so next thing you know, he's joined up, and then another friend joined up. Why? And it impacted their lives in a positive way as well, continuing to school and having. And Gary, for example, went on to a career in the military and became a helicopter pilot.
Oh, wow.
I actually had a goal of flying helicopters, but I'm colorblind, so they wouldn't let me do that. So that's kind of like, well, that changed my path because I became intrigued with financial services and moved in that direction because of my love of compounding interest. But one of the things we have to think about two things I think is important. We need younger people to try to get into home ownership. And they are
Yeah.
talking about, home prices are going to come down and so much. And that's being put out there by news media.
Yeah.
But I don't
It
know
is.
that that's necessarily going to be the case. It isn't like we're going to have all of a sudden a huge supply come available and push
Right.
down the prices. I just don't see how that's happening. But what we do need to do is get the younger people geared to thinking about not miss the opportunity of equity growth over time. That's kind of also like, well, why would I put money in IRAs? Why would I start doing a Roth now? Why would I start investing even a small amount? I'm just getting started in life. I've just finished college or I've just gone to work out of high school. Why would I start saving now? Why? Because compounding of growth, compounding interest. You miss that, you can't make it up. You're forever behind. So wherever you start is where you start. But if you start earlier, you're going to have more. So with that said, we have to think about real estate in that way.
Absolutely.
Got a little surprise here. We got some music coming through, so obviously we're going to take a short break, Dwayne, and for the listeners. Okay, well that stopped. Okay, that's good.
Hey,
Let
we
me
make our
reset
own
my
rules up,
thoughts
Gregory.
here.
We do what you do what you want. You've been on it. You do what you want. You want to just keep going. We keep going.
Yeah,
You
we're
know.
going to take a break at the bottom of the hour. I kind of like rolling through because you and I get going here. But
Yeah.
but you see where I'm going. That is,
Yeah.
they need to start thinking about how do I get into real estate now. And one of the things is, yeah, you're incurring debt, but then debt is something that's going to go down over time because you're going to make monthly payments on
And
it.
there's good debt, Gregory.
Yeah, go
Owning a
ahead.
home is good debt, right? And I think one of the things that keeps a lot of and it's sort of that generation where, well, you got to put down 20%. And a stat I just read that came out in an article I read that National Association of Realtors put out is the highest since 1989. First time home buyers are put down 10%. I think a lot of, and everybody doesn't have the shows like we've got, right? And to teach them and educate them on you don't have to put down 20%. I don't like seeing 10%, right? So a lot of this is people are trying to save or thinking I need more. And it's kind of like going, hey, I'm going to wait till I save enough money to have a child. Sometimes you just got to, you're never going to have enough. And when I see this on first-time home buyers being at 10%, and that's the highest since 1989, that's a big number. And I think it's a lot of just the education that's out there and making such a difference on maybe folks waiting a little bit more, right? And I think those are the things when you look at that is a big, big difference. So, it's a lot. Look, it's a lot, but those numbers I don't think we deal with as much in this market. But like you said, it's explaining and educating and showing the value of home ownership, I think, is just so important, right? It is so important. And then when you look at Gregory, here's something else too. repeat buyers put down a median of 23%. That's also the highest since 2003. So, Gregory, you know what that tells me? A repeat buyer puts down more than twice the amount as a new home buyer. So if that's not a banner for why home ownership is amazing, it's that right there. Because they're putting down that money because when they sell their home, they're taking that equity and they're either a move-up buyer or maybe even downside, but they're taking all that money they made because of that first step, that investment they made buying that first home, and putting it into the next one. And then guess what? When they move the next time, they'll put even that much more down. And little by little, you start building more wealth with using less of your money and letting the home work for you, but it's got to start somewhere.
Yeah,
and I think
it does have to start somewhere, and that could be for your first home doesn't have to be that big house. It's got to kind of be that starter home, and that means something that you can afford. With that said, you've got to make some good decisions regarding location, affordability, and I always define this, but I think you should be making a purchase based upon curb appeal. Yeah. I don't want to buy an ugly home that I can't dress up. I can't make look nice from the curb. If it's going to be forever ugly, you need to go buy something else. That's just an honest way I look at it. But it might not be the right color, but the color can be changed. The lawn and shrubs can be fixed up. It just needs to have that nice first appearance. It needs to be affordable because you're also buying something that's going to grow in value over time. And look at the stat you just gave on being a second time home buyer means they've got more money to put into the next purchase, so it means they can buy more. And change, adjusting to how they've evolved in life. And it's also not a bad thing if you're in that home forever either, because you're building equity there and it's growing in value. But when you think of wealth building, there's two parts. I think it is having property, having the right home, but it's also investing and putting money away for savings and market growth long term. And you kind of have to work to do both. You can't forsake one for the other. Yeah. Your thought?
And I agree with you 100%. One of the things I want to share with your listeners as well is this. I can't, as a lender, I can't give you something you can't afford. You can't call me and go, I want a $500,000 house, and you've got $100,000 student loan debt and you make $40,000 a year, and tell me I can't afford that. I already know that, right? So I can't put you in a home you can't afford. Now, with that being said, when I'm having conversations with my clients, is I understand the difference between what I can afford and what I'm willing to pay, right, Gregory? There's a big difference there as well. But what I want to be able to show people is don't base everything on, the old days. And if I had 20% to put down, or if I only had I talked to a client this week, Gregory, who is like, all right, so if I put down another $10,000, how much is that going to save me on my monthly note? And I said, $53 a month. So it's not, so that's where you've got to help explain to folks, you having that $10,000 in your pocket versus putting it in your home, that the only way you get out is to sell your house or to refinance it. To get your $10,000 back over $50, it's not worth it. Especially if we're not in a situation where that $53 is making a difference of you being able to buy the home or not. If we're getting
that is a good point,
right? We're having a conversation of you can't afford this, right? So those are the things. Having that understanding of, I can't afford that. And so many people, by the time we get off the phone and we go over their application, they're like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize I could afford that much. So that's the understanding of, but it's like you said, it's that first step, it's that conversation. But I can't put you in something you can't afford. So you got to be able to rest at ease with that.
Yeah, it's important because I think you should pay that extra 53 a month and hold on to that 10,000 for you've got to have emergency money. You've got to have a backstop, and you've got to save for the future as well. And think about that $53. You're probably getting a raise at your job. You know, most cases you get at least cost of living raise every year. That's how I think of it as a business owner for employees. That everybody, if you're working for them, we're getting a raise every year going forward there. But it's important to start doing things that's going to impact you, and you got to look to the future. And I don't know, maybe we're not teaching the young people about this. They're not learning this naturally and getting it passed along. And I do think, folks, you need to move out from your parents' home. You got to start planning your own routes, doing things yourself, and it's going to make everything better. But you should push out and do that, and be investing. And it may not, it's going to be hard, going to be a struggle. You may have to do without, but come a couple decades later, you're going to realize one day, it's like, wow, look what I've put together over time. And I think that's something that is needed. So there's a couple other things that's been talked about. And I don't know that this is a good idea. A 50-year mortgage is kind of like crazy numbers there. And I don't know if that's something that comes together. And then there's a couple other ideas being floated out there. But what reason you're having this conversation is what they're seeing. This is kind of a problem that people aren't getting out there and buying homes and starter homes and so forth. And we've got to get back to that thinking there. And you know, it's nice to be able to shift and go to a rental property or apartments and such, and we see all those big buildings being built up, and that is a transition point. But I think we need to shift to ownership from that, and that's part of wealth building.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt about it, and I think when we're looking at that, and look, AC goes down, it's no doubt it's easier to call your landlord and go, hey, I'm hot, come fix this, right? Versus, hey, now I got to find an AC person, I've got to pay this AC to be fixed, right? And that cost now falls on you, which is why we talk about, right, the 10 grand. Keep it, have your reserves, have that money set up in case something happens versus that $53 that it's going to take 15 years to make up your money. So it's understanding that. And I think those are the things when we're looking at it is where people are the biggest concerns. But, you know, when you start hearing about these 50-year mortgages and portable mortgages and all these things, look, Gregory, I'm you know, you're a pioneer. I like to think I'm trying to be a pioneer. I'm all about let's have a conversation. Let's listen to it, right? Let's see, is there some things? And I think that's what they're doing because, Gregory, they're saying they don't like the median age is 50-something years old, right, of a home buyer, right? So they understand that you've got to try to keep. And what is the biggest part of when you're looking at GDP and all, you know, your biggest part is home ownership and housing is 38 to 40% of it. So that's somebody's got to sell nails. We got to get builders going. Windows sold, right? You know, cement, wood, all these things. And to get that moving, it comes with home ownership is a big deal and getting houses done. Painting, like you said. Hey, maybe you look at a house. And I had a buyer a couple weeks ago. We just closed this week. And look, this house, when you looked at it from a picture, you talk about curb appeal, they used it to their advantage. They were able to see the forest through the trees. I mean, the color of this brick, I mean, it might have been called baby's diarrhea, right? Because it was, I don't even know how they made this color, right? But the buyer used that to their advantage, and you know what? They sent me pictures of the color they're painting the brick, right? Which is going to immediately add home value. So it's seeing that forest through the trees and understanding. But so them trying to get to circle back on why we're hearing about 50-year mortgages and portable mortgages and all that, they're just trying to get people think. They're trying to figure out how can we get the housing market sort of clicking again. But what's in recent memory is 20 and 21. How do we get it back to 2019 and before, which was a normal housing market, right? We're trying to catch up from 3% rates. It's not going to happen. It's not. So the 50-year, these portable things, I mean, it's I like it. I'm all about hearing ideas. I'm never opposed. I'll listen to any idea, and then we'll have to see how it goes. I think it's unique. I think there's some things there. I don't think it's what everybody on TikTok and all these folks are trying to make it sound like. I don't think I'm not worried about Gregory on a 50-year mortgage. I know I'm rambling here, but
we're going to dig into that a little bit because I've got noted here the portable loans, the 50-year, and I've got it versus a 30-year, 20-year, 15-year. But it's kind of that thinking, or I'm going to add one here: no down payment. Ability. I think there's going to be some stuff that comes from this throwing ideas out there that helps shift to where people can buy. And the portable loans, assumable loans, I don't know if those are still out there, but they kind of used to be a thing out there to help somebody get into a loan. If you qualify, you can assume it.
I definitely want to talk about those because I think I want people to understand how they work, more importantly, right, than just hearing it going, oh, I could get Greg's 2.5% rate. No, let's talk about how it works.
Yeah, or I like no down payment, that if somebody will back that and you got to pick up some risk there. The down payment is for a reason, but we're going to dig into these ideas on the other side and help people's thinking evolve. You're listening to Winning at Life with Gregory Ricks. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back.
Ask Gregory is a financial podcast from the guys who bring you Winning at Life with Gregory Ricks.
My mother just inherited a couple of annuities. If you could explain the difference between a government pension offset and the windfall elimination provision is.
You now make too much income to contribute to a Roth IRA.
Find the Ask Gregory podcast on the Winning at Life app, the iHeartRadio app, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify.
You all are so good.
Investment advisory services offered through AE Wealth Management, LLC.
Gumbo Nation, this is Dwayne Stein with MortgageGumbo.com. For 30-plus years, I've been a trusted local lender. Yes, local lender, helping thousands just like you borrow money for your home loan needs. Every client has a different set of needs, and as your local lender, yours is the only one that matters to me. Because if it matters to you, it's a must for us. So let's discuss today. Visit MortgageGumbo.com.
If you like money, you'll love the Winning at Life app. On the Winning at Life app, you can hear the Ask Gregory podcast, where you'll find episodes based on a financial topic. So if you're looking for help on a specific situation, there's a good chance you'll find it on the Ask Gregory podcast, including episodes on 401ks, taxes, stocks, Social Security, gold, and whether or not you should buy an RV. Hear the Ask Gregory podcast on the Winning at Life app, your wallet's favorite app.
If you've been listening to Winning at Life for a while now, you probably already know that estate planning is more than just a will. You may need a trust. You definitely need both of your powers of attorney. So what's your plan? Hi, I'm Wes Blanchard, an estate planning attorney at offices in Metairie. Listen, don't leave your loved ones in a bind. Call me and we'll make you a plan or update your existing plan. find me at wjblanchardlaw.com.
The Ricks Report with Gregory Ricks.
One of the core jobs with annuities that goes back hundreds of years is to guarantee income for life. It has that option in there. We like to use it as a distribution tool of income that, markets go all to hell and your assets won't go down. So that should be part of your blend to help levelize volatility with some risk-averse assets that's going to grow despite what's going on in the markets. It can be pension-like money, and a lot of what we do is bond-like money in that world. Bond-like is what annuities do, not what they are.
Winning at Life with Gregory Ricks. Saturday mornings at 10 on News Talk 99.5 WRNO. Find us on the Winning at Life app or GregoryRicks.com. Investment advisory services offered through AE Wealth Management, LLC.
Fox News, I'm Angelo Bavaro. The FBI has identified the men who they say showed up at U.S. Attorney Alina Habba's office with a baseball bat earlier this week as Keith Michael Lisa. And U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi says he's in custody. Investigators say he entered the federal building in Newark, New Jersey, returned without the bat, and then damaged property inside the office. He is facing federal charges for bringing a weapon into a federal facility and destruction of federal property. Expect less headaches at the airport now that the government shutdown is over.
Starting Saturday morning, the FAA says flight reductions at 40 of the nation's most high-traffic airports will be lowered from 6% to 3%. Officials say the 3% reduction will remain in place while they monitor system performance throughout the weekend.
Fox's Kristen Goodwin. America is listening to Fox News.
Welcome back. You're listening to Winning at Life with Gregory Ricks. We took a short break there, and we're back with more. We have Dwayne Stein with us this hour. We're kind of talking about wealth building and home ownership as a part of that. Dwayne's in the mortgage business, so he's kind of there to help you get that going. And one of the things that's alarming that we talked about in the first section of this was how first-time buyers' median age is surprising, is beyond age 40. It's like, wow, we have to change that. I think the average first-time home buyer needs to be in the 20s. And why are people putting off? They've got to work towards finding a way of building equity and wealth. Less than 50% of the people have adequate savings for retirement. There's kind of two parts to that. I think is problematic. What that data tells us is there's not equity being built in home ownership, having property. If you're renting all your life, tell me, what have you built from that? There's not equity in that. And they didn't start saving early. And this isn't about having thousands a year to save. We're talking about $50 a month, $100 a month, even if you're starting with $25 a month, because what that money is kind of starting in motion, compounding. And it's small amount of compounding, but it's going to keep growing and growing larger over decades. And that happens with home ownership. And you might buy your forever home and be satisfied with that first ever home you bought. It's kind of like, yeah, I'm good. This is where I'm going to be from now on. Or it could be a stepping stone, which it was for me and a lot of others. And I bet, Dwayne, you're not in your first home, are you? Hold it. You're cutting out there, Dwayne.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, go ahead. Are you in your first home?
No, absolutely not. No. And, it was move up. I'm not in the same size house I was initially, right? But little by little, making moves to in life improvement, needs, family size, stuff like that. So, no, not at all. And I think that's the biggest thing, understanding as you move forward. And it's a stepping stool like anything. And I think that is the hardest thing, Gregory. You talk about the world we live in now is a I want it now world, and it's hard. You got kids graduating from college who think they should be making $100,000, right? So is that the mentality also of, hey, I get affordability, but is it oh my gosh, no way I'm buying a $210,000 house. I want $500,000. So maybe that is where some of the stuff and the holdback's coming from.
Yeah, here is, and speaking of people getting out of college thinking they should get paid ridiculous money, and that's, hey, that's a nice thought, but you're going to have to work your way into that. Not that I didn't have those thoughts either.
Sure.
Early on, but I also had to come to the reality of it. But one of the things I thought about early on back then is, well, I didn't want any debt. How can I go to college and pay for it along the way that I don't end up owing money at the end? And that's one of the big problems, is people are going to college owing tremendous debt. And that thinking has to change, that if that's how you've got to do it, maybe you shouldn't be going to college. There's a lot of jobs out there that pays a lot of money right out of high school. And maybe if you're determined to do that, you should work your way through that college education as well. But you surely shouldn't be getting out of college and having tens of thousands of debt. You're going the wrong way. You need to get out of high school, and you should be out of high school without debt. And if you're going to do continue education beyond high school, you need to manage that in a way that you don't incur debt, because what it's going to prevent you from doing is a couple natural things that's going to start a progression that creates future wealth, and that is owning a home, and that is investing as well. And you need to think that way. And I think that's foundational thinking that we haven't talked about on this show before quite this way, but these gaps that are showing up in society are problematic. And you need to get out your parents' home, get to work, and start building it for yourself. Because I can tell you, living off your parents forever, you're not building wealth there if that's how you want to exist. And your parents, they need to be putting away money, not supporting you through adulthood. They need to be putting money away so that they can create more retirement savings for the future, because they're going to have to retire. And let me ask you, kids, do you want to support your parents in retirement? I think not.
Nope.
You kind of expect them to take care of their own, and then you've got to do the same. And real estate's a difficult thing. So a few concepts we want to talk about with you, Dwayne, is go back to this, how this used to be. And I think there are programs where there's no down payment to little down payment. What opportunities are there out there? And I think we're going to have more coming.
Yeah, VA obviously is 100% financing. What I mean by that is no down payment, right? But obviously military.
Yeah.
So outside of that, you've got rural development is a great program. And here's what I could tell you. That's going up a lot. I mean, now a family up to 5 family can make $120,000 a year and get rural development, which is a no money down program.
Wow.
And Gregory, a lot of times when I'm talking to, because, somebody just calls somebody who told them to call somebody, and then they get to me and I'm like, you don't have to put any down payment. We get them qualified for rural development. But some companies maybe don't offer it, or the banks, different things like that. So we're able to do that, and it's a no money down program. And people hear rural development, they think they've got to be in an area where you got to have cows and horses. Well, you don't. It's all based on that market. You put the address in, and we look it up, and we see if it qualifies for it. But that number has grown tremendously, Greg. I mean, over the last several years, the income used to be right at like 72,000. Now it's up to 120,000. If it's a family of 5 or more, it's over 140,000. So there's opportunities there. That's a program we always look at first. My number one question, Gregory, is always, hey, are you military, or are you a veteran, or are you anything like that where we can take advantage of that program? The next thing is, where do you want to live, and what's your income? Because those are the two programs I'm looking at first and foremost, because it's no out of pocket, right? And the great thing about those, if you get the seller to contribute, you're literally coming to the closing with the lent in your pocket, right? So that's what we try to do first, and then we go from other places. There, I would like to see some more of those options. I think they are. If you start to see that and it moves towards more of a conventional loan away from a government loan, I think you'll see higher rates, but maybe they won't have the stipulations on the debt-to-income ratios and stuff like that. There's some rumors out there of that. Look, they're throwing a lot of stuff out there, and like you said, we've got to get that housing market. People are literally, Gregory, and we've been talking about this for years, the locked-in effect is real. People are locked into a mortgage because they've got under 4%, and you got to get that moving. They're building equity, but they want people obviously moving. So that's where they're coming up with some of these 50-year and portable stuff like that they're talking about.
Yeah, how the heck would a 50-year work? That is, you're not creating debt. You're always paying down principal over time. It's just taking a lot longer. And then when you kind of look at on a 30-year mortgage, you're paying a lot of interest over the time, but it's manageable because you are whittling down debt as well. But 50-year, that's almost like buying your forever home, it feels like. And I know that's not the case, but you're going to build equity a lot slower. But have you done the math to that? Does that bring down the payment very much going over 50 years?
So let's talk about that. So look, devil's advocate here, what I'm going to say is, like you just said, I'm not in my first home. I'm in my 4th or 5th home. Right? So when they try to sell you on, oh my gosh, look at how much more interest you pay. For instance, when I ran the math, on a $300,000 loan, on 30 years at a 6.3 interest rate, your total payback's right at like $370,000. Okay? On a 50-year, your total payback's going to be right at $755,000. So it's $380-something grand. Now, that number doesn't bother me because I don't know many people, and I'm sure folks listening, who sit in their home for 30 years and never refinance. So that is not a big number. What I'm wanting to share is, and what I was looking at, to me, and it was sort of because as soon as I heard it, I'm like, oh, man, let's go see. This is going to be great. Well, a 15-year note doesn't have the same rate as a 30-year. So to think that a 50-year note rate is going to be the same as a 30, it's not. And we're already so if we just use kind of the difference, 0.5%, Gregory, on that same $300,000 home going out to 50 years from 30, it's $102 a month. So if you're buying a house with mortgage gumbo and your ratio's at 35%, you're not going to take, hey, do you want a 0.5% higher rate to save $100 a month? You're not going to do that. Everybody wants lower. When times are good, people want lower. When times are bad, they want lower, right? So my thing when we're looking at that is that $100 difference there, to me, I was a little bit, I knew it wasn't going to be what everybody thought it was going to be. But that is not – so who is going to get those homes, Gregory? It's going back to what we were talking about earlier. The person that's going to get that home is the person who, if $100 is a difference of getting in a home or not, you're going to be struggling. right? If you got to go out to 50 years because you need to save $100 to be able to get into that house, you're probably buying too much house, and you're pushing your budget. And we have people that do it, and it's my job to say yes. But that's what I think a lot of folks need to understand on this 50-year. Don't get caught. Who cares about the interest? You're going to refinance, blah, blah, blah. But
Yeah,
it's not going to
yeah.
be this big earth-shattering number where, all right, yeah, put me on a 50-year. It's going to save me $400 a month. So if you make the same payment on your 50-year as you get on your 30, right? It's a difference. That same $300,000, you pick up $20,000. So you're not moving from the outhouse to St. Charles Avenue. It's $20,000. So that is why, again, it sounds good on TV. I like hey, we're thinking outside the box, right, Gregory? You and I like that. Let's have a conversation. I'm good with that. But it's not the answer. Is it going to help? Maybe some folks. But is it something where that person, like I said, who's going to be, they budget conscious anyway, and they're going with the philosophy we talked about earlier, what I can afford, what I'm willing to pay is two different things? Or are they going to take a higher rate just so they can add 20 years to their mortgage for $100? I don't think they are. I just don't.
Yeah, and that's one thing. Whether it's a 30 or 50 or 100-year mortgage, I just throw this ridiculous stuff out there. Yeah. You're not locked in to that payment because you can always pay more. My first one was a 30-year.
Yep.
And I think I paid what the plan was, and then I eventually sold that for quite a bit of profit. A number of years later, I picked up another property where I bought some land, built a house, but actually I did a 20-year, and the interest rate is great, and I started paying, and I would pay more on it, and I've paid it down quite a bit. It's going to be paid off in less than 20 years because of paying more, but kind of at this point, I really don't throw extra at it. Why? Right. It's going to be paid off before it was originally set up as it is now, but I'm not throwing extra money at it anymore. Why? It's a low interest rate. I'm like, I can get better use out of that 4% money elsewhere.
Absolutely.
I've got another property that you helped me on, 30-year mortgage, and I don't know that I'm throwing anything at it because I'm fine with where it's at. It doesn't press me. I don't mind the debt. I could pay the darn thing off. I could accelerate it. And then I picked up another property with it's amortized, configures the payment over 30 years, and you would explain this better, but essentially it's a 5-year with a balloon note. There. Yeah. And why would I have done something like that 20 years ago? Heck no. And your thinking evolves over time, but I go back to what did I do originally? Heck, I was doing whatever I could to get into a home and did a 30-year mortgage, and I actually bought that and got it financed, getting it through an auction back then. And that turned out to how that started leveraging me to the next property, because I was building up equity. And that's life changing. And then, and look at me, 30 years ago, I would never imagine, like, why would I do that? And I'm not going to put a number out here, but I can tell you 20 years ago, it's like, oh my gosh, I would never buy something that costs that much.
Right. Right.
And then things changed. That Gregory wouldn't, but this Gregory doesn't mind spending that because he can and knows how the value keeps going up, and that's that mindset. And I just wish the younger Gregory put more away in the stock market.
Yeah.
And,
but here's the thing,
and
too,
savings and stocks and bonds and stuff like that. I wish that Gregory did more, but that Gregory evolved as well.
But here's the thing. Younger Gregory bought that first house based on budget.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, today's day, and you want to know why the median, all the ages are going up, everybody's basing everything on the number on a piece of paper, which is an interest rate.
And that doesn't matter.
And it doesn't matter.
It doesn't.
And that's the biggest thing, right? So you just kind of summed it up. Young Gregory versus today's Gregory. Young Gregory did everything on a budget, and those moves allowed today's Gregory to be able to do some other investments with some unique programs to build wealth in different areas, right? So, and to be able to go, hey, yeah, you know what? I can do that type of loan because young Gregory did budget. Today, everybody's chasing a number. Nobody calls and goes, hey, can you tell me what my affordability is? Every call is, hey, what are your rates? Don't know anything. Don't know down payment. What are your rates? And that is the problem. I get it. Who doesn't want a low rate? But it's young Gregory, young Dwayne. It was based on budget. Here's what I can afford, not the number on a piece of paper. How do we get there? Obviously. And that's, I think, the difference. So now everybody's wanting to go, well, I need these rates. I need these rates. I need these rates. Gregory, every house that's being bought right now with us, every appraisal's coming back more than the sales price. Every single one. So that even tells you in this environment right now, and for that to happen means homes are selling at, above what they're even asking. So the money is there. The wealth is there. It's proven, right? There's some, turds in a punch bowl, so to speak. But for the most part, you're going to win in real estate. And I think that's the greatest thing that you just said is, young Gregory, you can't look at, that's why sometimes, and I get moms and dads on the phones and aunts and uncles and grandmas and grandpas and have to explain to them, you can't give young Gregory today's Gregory advice, right? Because it's different. It's not a 20% where it's budgetary. So let's look at things differently on how to work in their world. Unless you're going to pay their note for them, then we listen to whatever they got to say. If it's bank of mom and dad, heck yeah, let's roll. You know what I'm saying? Whatever bank of mom and dad's giving you 50%, let's rock. Greatest thing ever. But if it's you, we got to look at how do we maintain that budget and how do we keep you with money for those next down the road, for those other expenses in the future.
So the realtor situation has changed somewhat. So you're going out there buying, and I've experienced that as well. And it's kind of split. You've got a realtor that represents the seller of the property,
yep,
and then a realtor that represents the buyer. And those are two separate things now. You could work with somebody that handles both sides, but I don't know where their allegiance is if you utilize the seller of the property, and you could, but if they were connected to that seller, there might be a bias there to represent that.
Yeah, it's a dual agent. It would be kind of tough, right?
Yeah, I think you should have a relationship with somebody that's working for you, and you could get the seller to pay your agent's fee, but you might be willing to. You need to pay your agent that's representing you, because I think that's kind of important. Your thoughts on that world as we've seen that evolve?
Yeah, that world has changed since last year, and the biggest thing is, listen, for the most part, the seller, it used to just be understood the seller pays it. Now they've got to put it down on paper. But what I'm amazed at is the inability of some realtors to have a conversation. A realtor will call me and go, what's your rates? What's this? What's that? Yet a realtor can't go to Gregory and go, hey, listen, for me to represent you, here's what my cost is going to be. Right? Now, that realtor is going to ask the listing agent to pay that, but if that listing agent isn't willing to pay that, is Gregory or Dwayne willing to pay that for you? Well, guess what? That's a tough conversation, right, Gregory?
Mm-hmm.
So they don't like to do that. So that is the biggest difference there. And I get not everybody can. But for the most part, 99.9% of the deals I see, the listing agent, the seller, is still paying the buyer agent fees. It's just now got to be disclosed on what that is going to be. So some sellers will say, hey, you know what, Gregory, do you want to accept this offer from Dwayne? you know what, he wants $10,000 in closing costs. I tell you what, I'll give him the $10,000, but instead of paying that buyer agent 3%, I'll give him 2.5%. Or instead of 2.5%, I'll give him 2%. Right? So that's kind of how it gets worked out.
Okay, it makes sense, and it clarifies the roles out there. But just wanted to throw that into the mix because we're encouraging people to kind of start this process and not get bogged down on interest rate. That's just a temporary thing that you're not going to be stuck with the rest of your life out there. Dwayne, tremendous content you gave us today and value to the listeners. How do they reach you?
Very easy. Hey, obviously you can find me Winning at Life with Gregory Ricks. So just go to mortgagegumbo.com.
Thank you for being with us today.
Always a pleasure.
Awesome.
We're going to Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Dwayne. Appreciate you. And we're going to take a short break. We'll be right back with hour 2 of Winning at Life with Gregory Ricks.
You all are so good. I've listened to you for years.
Ask Gregory is a financial podcast from the guys who bring you Winning at Life with Gregory Ricks.
I am near retirement, and I wish I would have been listening to y'all for the last couple of years.
Learn the ins, outs, do's, don'ts, rules, and tools of the financial world.
I have a broker who has no idea what you and I just talked about.
From your 401k to your IRA to your pension to your Social Security to your Medicare.
Hi, Greg. Appreciate your service to the community.
From your ETFs to your precious metals.
The program helps to ground me with some personal, real life there.
Find the Ask Gregory podcast on the Winning at Life app, the iHeartRadio app, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify, and wherever else you can find podcasts, probably.
That's exactly what I needed to know. Hey, I love your show.
Investment advisory services offered through AE Wealth Management, LLC. The firm is not affiliated with the U.S. government or any governmental agency.
Cancer Crusaders has been raising funds for cancer research in New Orleans since 1978. Cancer Crusaders Incorporated is a non-profit, all-volunteer organization with no administrative overhead. Cancer Crusaders has raised over $5 million for the local cancer research centers, LSU Stanley S. Scott Cancer Center and Tulane Cancer Center in New Orleans, where they are working on a cure for cancer. Get involved, donate, volunteer, or attend a fundraiser. Visit us at cancercrusadersla.org.
Winning at Life with Gregory Ricks is a copyright of Down South Strategies for the private use of our audience. Any unauthorized use of this broadcast without express consent is prohibited. For podcasts, show information, and contacts to our sponsors, go to winningatlife.com or download the Winning at Life app. If you have a financial situation and you're not quite sure what to do, you better call Gregory. We are Winning at Life with Gregory Ricks.
News Talk 99.5 WRNO FM, New Orleans, comes from the Mortgage Gumbo Studios.
Your locally trusted home loan lender, mortgagegumbo.com.
I'm Paul Stevens, Fox News. The suspect in the attack on acting U.S. Attorney Alina Habba's office in New Jersey now in custody. Fox's Chanley Painter.
Attorney General Pam Bondi making the announcement, posting, quote, thanks to the great work of the FBI, the U.S. Marshals, and HSI, the suspect wanted in the attack on U.S. Attorney Habba's office is now in custody. No one will get away with threatening or intimidating our great U.S. attorneys or the destruction of their offices. This all comes after the FBI offered a $25,000 reward for the arrest and conviction of that man, Keith Michael Lisa. Police say he has ties to Mahwah, New Jersey and New York City. Well, on Wednesday, police say Lisa entered the federal building with a baseball bat, but after being denied entry, he returned later without it and then proceeded to the floor where Alina Habba's office is located. The Attorney General saying Thursday the man was trying to confront Habba.
And Alina Habba posting on X, quote, I will not be intimidated by radical lunatics for doing my job, unquote. A police officer in critical condition after a crash while escorting Vice President J.D. Vance's motorcade in Tennessee.
It happened when two police vehicles collided in Marysville, Tennessee. The injured officer, a motorcycle cop with the Marysville Police Department, hit by a car driven by a state trooper who was treated on the scene by paramedics. The Secret Service says the accident did did not detract from the protection of the vice president. The crash occurring as Vance's motorcade was on its way to a Republican National Committee fundraiser. Gary Baumgarten, Fox News.
Government shutdown-related flight cuts will be reduced today from 6% to 3% at 40 major airports across the U.S. Travelers not out of the woods yet. There are already over 400 delays and around 270 cancellations across the U.S. today. America's listening to Fox News.
Welcome to Winning at Life, live financial news talk radio. Thanks for joining us today. We've been doing this show for better than 15 years. If you're new to the show, go to GregoryRicks.com. Check out the website, a little bit about me. I'm CEO, founder of Gregory Ricks and Associates, the Total Wealth Authority, advisors, and retirement strategies. We love working with people and helping them with their money. We've got some neat things that we're working on, some new initiatives as we're expanding our services. And we basically at the core have multiple pillars that we work with people on. Part of that is creating retirement plans. Part of that is creating investment plans. Foundation is kind of making sure you have emergency money there. But also with the long-term view of what we're doing is making sure you have a sustainable income plan. Along the ways, you've got to deal with things like insurance, paying off debt, estate planning, taxes. Taxes is, you know, if you think about it, what is your biggest bill every year? You might think, it's easy, it's my mortgage, or it might be your college debt. But look at your, because that tax bill, I think it may well be your tax bill. So you kind of look at that. Well, it's kind of hidden because it's withheld from your paycheck for most people. And if you're in business or self-employed, you're kind of having to handle that and set aside. And if you haven't done that properly, yeah, that's at the end of the year or at tax time, there's a shock coming to you, and you may owe more money. Yeah, I don't live life by setting a goal as I hope one day I'll pay $1 million in taxes. I don't look at that as a goal ever, and I never have set it as a goal. I've always kind of thought of either income or revenue to the business. And of course, if you're looking at income going up, yeah, you're going to end up with a bigger tax bill. But what you have to have in planning along the way is, what can I do to reduce my tax exposure? It's not something that's going to go away. And in the reality of it, yeah, if you are paying more in taxes this year than you ever have, well, guess what? You made more than you ever have. I think the two kind of go hand in hand, but what I do want you to do is make more money each year going forward. If you've got a business, have more business profits. Inevitably, you're going to pay more in taxes, but here's the way to look at that. I think it's something that maybe you should look at as a percentage of income. And of course, as income goes up, you move to larger tax brackets. But there's efficiencies out there that you can, as a percentage, can I lower my tax bill? Do things in such a way that saves me some tax dollars that I otherwise, instead of just going to the IRS grid, based on that grid, you're paying this amount. But are there things that you can do to create efficiency from taxes? And it even has to do with maybe selling your real estate or selling your house or selling your business. And there can be incentives out there also from a business standpoint. And that's where I think planning is important. And planning needs to start well before time for taxes to be due. And I think that's an important part. If you kind of see three major areas on how we're evolving as a firm, their focus is being put on, as of course, is growing investments with a purpose of generating income at retirement. So I kind of spoke of two parts right there. Another part is the tax part needs to go hand in hand with that. So we're working on some initiatives to make that much more efficient for folks working with our firm, and I'll be talking more about that in weeks to come as we finalize some details. But it is to work hand in hand and create efficiency and maybe help you with the mindset. And this is where people kind of struggle on maybe what, and I'll tell you, the young Gregory going back 40 years ago, you know, what I always liked, I like to do it myself. And I did that for a long time. But looking back, I wished I'd never had done it myself. But I had the knowledge and I studied and learned all that. And still, I don't think that was best use for me, because also what I wished I had utilized was somebody that knows more than me about that and how that's evolved. And the current Gregory I utilize people that are specialists in that arena for tax efficiencies and stuff. And even from a firm standpoint, we have a team of people we've hired to help with that as well. And we're taking that to the next step to make sure all clients have access to that and those efficiencies. And sometimes when the younger Gregory was like, well, why would I pay for that? Because I can do it for myself. And I'll tell you, that was wrong thinking, because it might be worth paying if you're getting more value out of that. And then the other thing that's really important is estate planning. And it's not just for those in retirement. I'm not going to go off on a deep tangent on that, but you've already heard me talking about that. Is we're putting together strategies that every client at a minimum has a will and the proper powers of attorneys, mainly to do with financial if something happens while living, because those are kind of negated when you die. So then it goes to the will, and then the next layer would add trust to that, or the trust would supplant the will. But what we want is every client to have that core stuff. So we're building that out. We're going to talk more about that in the coming weeks, as kind of have these pieces put together for you, that we're going to have a roadmap for that all these things are taken care of to get you to a great place. Another important part about working with a firm is having that counseling. Yeah, you can go use AI to do some investment plan, but AI is not going to counsel you and talk about these other things and give you those nudges and the resources that we have to bring people to bear to help you with these things. course, you could do it on your own, but you're just not going to have access to all this stuff and these knowledge bases. And if you like what you're hearing and want to start a conversation, the office number is 504-832-9200. That's 504-832-9200. No matter where you're listening to the show from, reach out to us. If you're wanting to come to one of the offices in Metairie, Louisiana, Gulfport, Mississippi, Mandeville, Louisiana, you can go in office for visits with an advisor team and start that conversation. And you've just got to reach out to that number or email info@gregoryricks.com. There's a chat box at the website also as another way to get started. I'm going to give you in a little bit here some downloads as well from that standpoint, but I'll go ahead and toss one over to you. Are you paying too much in taxes in retirement? Go to gregoryricks.com/too much. It's TOO much to get started. And I'm going to toss out a couple of those to you earlier, but one of the topics I have today, and let's see, how to make sure you don't run out of money in retirement. I'm referencing an article from Investopedia. As you know, I do considerable reading. I was reading a piece by some authorities, and I'm going to go back to that article because it was kind of powerful that you don't realize how much reading people do, and those that are experts in their fields and authorities in their field of how much reading they do. I can simplify it for you because you can tune into the show. I do a lot of content of that, but you'd probably be kind of shocked at how much there. But that's why I stay abreast of everything, and my knowledge base and thinking and how I do things continues to evolve, and that's how our firm as an advisory firm constantly evolves and gets better from that standpoint. But this article from Investopedia, and it's by Catherine Pauljug, and that's one of the things that's kind of important, is making sure you've saved money for retirement, but you also don't want to outlive that. So from her standpoint, living on a fixed income requires thoughtful planning and spending. These 5 tips can help ensure you don't outlive your savings. That's where you don't want to get to the back end of that. Why might that happen? Could because you're overspending and you don't really know how to look further down the road. Or you've lived longer than you expected to. And that's kind of important as well. Takeaways in the article are financial planners say retirees are more likely to outlive their savings due to poor planning and spending habits. And that's another reason, is to have those conversations with a financial advisor. They also say experts recommend keeping 5 years of income needs in safer assets and tracking expenses closely to avoid premature portfolio depletion. And the third is, while Social Security's future is uncertain, advisors urge focusing on factors you can control, like when to decide, or let me reword that, like when you decide to collect benefits. With Social Security feeling uncertain and the cost of living on the rise, many Americans are worried that they will live longer than their savings. I think Social Security is a really important of the decision process, and that's one reason we do an analysis. And even when folks come in for a first visit, that and kind of have that initial discussion and fit visit, get to know us and we get to know them. there's a number of things we prepare for your second visit. It's like going to a doctor and, okay, we're going to run these different tests. And when you come back in, we're going to go over that. There's probably anywhere from 4 to 8 different analysis we can run for you subject to what happens in that first visit. But one of them for sure is that Social Security analysis for both of you in the couple and your situation, and give you some recommendations on what you might need to think about on when to turn that on and what's more effective. And sometimes it comes back where for the spouse probably is a good time to turn that on now while the primary breadwinner in the household continues to defer. And I'm not going to get into the weeds, but there's different scenarios, and there's kind of been some cases, it's kind of time for both of you to consider that might be the case as well. So I think that's an important decision, and we do that for clients every year until both have turned on Social Security. It's that important of a decision. So number one, thing to do is spend time on planning. Planning is one of the most important steps to make sure you don't run out of money in retirement. You don't just pick an age you want to stop working and assume things will work out. You need to know where you are on the path and where you are going. You know, sometimes the initial conversations when a family comes into the office is they're kind of like, when can I retire? Or can I retire next year? Or they might not know when that is. You know, can I retire now? It is often a question, but they're also wanting to make sure that window matches up with when they're wanting to retire and can I? And sometimes the conversation goes, hey, you're working now because you want to. Or, yeah, you kind of need to go a few more years. You may have to go longer because you just haven't got there. Everybody's at a different place, and retirement is not a one size fits all. It is everybody's situation is unique. So you've also got to think about that time horizon. The economy is going to fluctuate during retirement, and withdrawing from retirement accounts during market downturns can significantly reduce the value of your savings. So you could be great shape when you retire. And even if you've kind of started this process on your own and you've done it yourself, you could have impacted and this go the wrong way because of market fluctuations. And in this article, they suggest keep 5 years of income needs in safer assets like cash, CDs, or short-term bonds so market drop doesn't force withdrawals from stocks at a worse time. Because when you take and you're spending from a stock market account and it's gone down, well, you see the history. There's been dips in the past. Heck, the NASDAQ at one point earlier this year was down 20%. For a short period of time. So if you were taking income from that, what'd you do? You locked in losses based on previous highs. So once again, you want to avoid taking withdrawals from stocks and bonds and so forth at their worst time. Then the bulk of your savings can stay invested and allow it to keep growing when the market turns around. And we think there's multiple categories of how investments should be invested because everything shouldn't be based upon growth. During your working years, yeah, you can be more heavily in that, but you've got to have a stable area where you're taking income from. And I do believe in that 5-year period as a minimum. But we also have a process of replenishing that. And sometimes that box might not be a 5-year box, but it might even be a longer box as well, where we're taking income from an area that will not go down in value. And that allows the rest of the assets to run. And we really want to always look a decade out where those assets are that we're wanting to let run. And it isn't like we're shifting all that money in 10 years, but you think of that money over there that we're allowing it to run, we will shift money over time to that safer strategy of where you're going to take income from. And this isn't something you just start at retirement. I'd say 5 years prior to retirement, you need to be thinking about how you have that balance starting to be created there, because you also don't want to have those assets running hard, so to speak, and then at retirement time, okay, we're going to make that shift. Well, what if you had a dip happen at that time? Are you wanting to put off retirement? I think not. This needs to be done in a way that no matter what the market's doing, your retirement time that you've selected should be able to flow and move into that transition. You also need to track your expenses. It can be easy to assume you have plenty to spend in retirement, but if you spent all these years savings and you aren't tracking your expenses, you might run through savings before you realize it. And that's one of the questions in sitting down with families, kind of like, what are your monthly expenses? What is your monthly income? And you know what? People don't know that off the top of their head. In most cases, it's something they have to think about. You need to go and look at what's happened. And this is one reason I like the cash report. I like to see what my inflow and outflow is on a monthly basis from a personal standpoint. From a business standpoint, I look at that on a weekly basis. But from a personal household standpoint, I want to see what my inflow is versus my outflow. And if you're doing that, you kind of know, yeah, Gregory, we know what we spend every month on things. They ebb and flow a little bit because of shopping here and there, but that's kind of loosely what we spend a month. That would be great if everybody knew that, but that's not the norm. But that is something that you have to adjust to. You have to have an understanding of your expenses. And sometime when you should at least yearly do a spending audit. I kind of at times have used that as a budget audit, but sometimes you might want to think of that as a spending audit to kind of see where can we trim, what kind of waste has developed. And then the other thing is to keep spending dynamic. Another mistake to avoid is assuming your spending can stay the same each year. Retirement spending should be dynamic, meaning higher in good markets, leaner in down years. The retirees who stay solvent are the ones who adapt when conditions change. And that is to have those consultations of knowing how spending, how savings going. One of the questions we check on each year, how is emergency savings? Is that stable? Has that increased or has that gone down? If it's gone down, why from that standpoint? In addition to tracking your spending, track the market. Pay attention to how far your dollar stretches. Save big expenses like travel for times when the market is up and avoid debt when you can adjust your daily expenses more easily when prices rise. I don't necessarily want to time my vacations by, market's up, I can do that. It should be part of the flow and budgeted in, not just on good market years. I think it should be more consistency and discussion about how things are going, and use your advisor as a sounding board and be thoughtful about Social Security. Many Americans are worried about the future of Social Security. I don't worry too much about that. I don't think it's going away, but there might be tweaks in it. That's coming. I'd say worry is understandable, but panic, you shouldn't panic over it. Social Security, if the trust fund's basically kind of depleted, but they're going to make some tweaks. The system may adjust through smaller cost of living increases, higher taxes, or later eligibility. But I'm going to tell you my opinion and what the article references, the benefits aren't vanishing. For younger investors, experts suggest planning retirement without counting on Social Security to create more flexibility. I agree with that. Now, back end of life, Social Security is a part of the mix. But if you're in your 20s and 30s, pick an income goal and start saving towards that. It's too far out to know in place, but you're going to get some benefits from Social Security. Everybody is what the expectation is. But I wouldn't, in my 30s or even early 40s, put that as a part of the factor. I'm kind of like, if I have $1 million in retirement savings, build up my 401k, this is the income I can build from that. That's the kind of the certainties of what you can control, and the other will be pluses, whether you have a pension, Social Security, those type of things that's added to the mix right there. I think that article kind of gives you some good help right there. That's going to be put up on our blog, also over at GregoryRicks.com. I think that was a pretty good piece from Investopedia. You get to do reading, you get to add all this different knowledge to your foundation and become better with your money. So our process at Gregory Ricks and Associates, a Total Wealth Authority, advisors and retirement strategies, is we have a multiple meeting process. We have that roadmap on our website at GregoryRicks.com, but it kind of starts with a first visit. There's no obligation to get started on any visit. I think it's kind of like dating. You know, and your first date might start with a lunch. If it goes well, schedule another lunch. If you keep having lunches, you're probably seeing each other. If we keep having meetings, well, obviously we're working together, but we're not required to keep having lunches. Well, we're not required to have meetings. You're not required to do so. But we also give you steps to choose to go to the next thing. And nobody's going to put pressure on you, and it's really got to be a fit in both directions from that. And that's what you want to look at. Are we a good fit? Are we going to bring value? Are we looking out for your best interest? And do you feel that we are, as a firm, are successful and going to be around a long time, and the team? And that's one reason you should come into any of our offices. You're going to see that we're successful, that we have a number of people. Go check us out on our website. Look at our staffing, and we're on the search of hiring other people. If we weren't successful in growing, we wouldn't be hiring more people. We might be going the other way and shrinking. But no, we're looking to hire more people. So go check us out and then reach out and start a conversation. So start out by going and visiting our website, GregoryRicks.com. We're going to take a short break here, and we're going to be back with another half hour of great content. I've got a lot of stuff to feed to you on that next hour, so be sure to stick around. We'll be right back. This is Winning at Life with Gregory Ricks.
Ask Gregory is a financial podcast from the guys who bring you Winning at Life with Gregory Ricks.
My mother just inherited a couple of annuities. If you could explain the difference between a government pension offset and the windfall elimination provision is.
You now make too much income to contribute to a Roth IRA.
Find the Ask Gregory podcast on the Winning at Life app, the iHeartRadio app, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify.
You all are so good.
Investment advisory services offered through AE Wealth Management, LLC.
Gumbo Nation, this is Dwayne Stein with MortgageGumbo.com. For 30 plus years, I've been a trusted local lender. Yes, local lender, helping thousands just like you borrow money for your home loan needs. Every client has a different set of needs, and as your local lender, yours is the only one that matters to me. Because if it matters to you, it's a must for us. So let's discuss today. Visit MortgageGumbo.com.
If you like money, you'll love the Winning at Life app. On the Winning at Life app, you can hear the Ask Gregory podcast, where you'll find episodes based on a financial topic. So if you're looking for help on a specific situation, there's a good chance you'll find it on the Ask Gregory podcast, including episodes on 401ks, taxes, stocks, Social Security, gold, and whether or not you should buy an RV. Hear the Ask Gregory podcast on the Winning at Life app, your wallet's favorite app.
If you've been listening to Winning at Life for a while now, you probably already know that estate planning is more than just a will. You may need a trust. You definitely need both of your powers of attorney. So what's your plan? Hi, I'm Wes Blanchard, an estate planning attorney of offices in Metairie. Listen, don't leave your loved ones in a bind. Call me and we'll make you a plan or update your existing plan. Find me at wjblanchardlaw.com.
The Ricks Report with Gregory Ricks.
One of the core jobs with annuities that goes back hundreds of years is to guarantee income for life. It has that option in there. We like to use it as a distribution tool of income that, markets go all to hell and your assets won't go down. So that should be part of your blend to help levelize volatility with some risk-averse assets that's going to grow despite what's going on in the markets. It can be pension-like money, and a lot of what we do is bond-like money in that world. Bond-like is what annuities do, not what they are.
Winning at Life with Gregory Ricks, Saturday mornings at 10 on News Talk 99.5 WRNO. Find us on the Winning at Life app or GregoryRicks.com. Investment advisory services offered through AE Wealth Management, LLC.
Stevens, Secretary for Pete Hegseth, saying the U.S. is ramping up military activity in the Caribbean.
He says the mission defends our homeland, removes narco-terrorists from our hemisphere, and secures our homeland from the drugs that are killing people. The U.S. military is expected to ramp up exercises in Trinidad and Tobago off the coast of Venezuela.
Fox's Christina Coleman. Democratic leaders in North Carolina speaking out against a rumored potential federal immigration crackdown in Charlotte.
The Department of Homeland Security not commenting on future or potential operations, and local officials say they have yet to receive any formal notification.
Fox's Kristen Goodwin. And the FAA now easing some limits it placed on commercial flights at 40 major U.S. airports since.
Okay, welcome to Winning at Life. In this segment, I've got a couple topics I'm going to discuss with you. For newbies just tuning into the show, I know this happens, and you don't tune in just at the top of the hour, but you might be just now tuning in or kind of flipped over to the station or clicked a link and started streaming. And hey, welcome to everybody that is streaming the show on the our YouTube channel and Facebook Live as well, or have tuned in to iHeartRadio and now picking up the show. We've been doing this for years, and it's a show we bring to you every Saturday. And basically, it's financial talk radio. I've been in the industry for the most part of my adult life. It's not something I started doing a few years ago, or I started doing when I did the radio show. I've worked with families for decades before I started doing the show over 15 years ago. And so I just transfer the knowledge I'm absorbing and growing along the way that I've developed and keep adding on. I'm CEO, founder of Gregory Ricks and Associates, the Total Wealth Authority, advisors and retirement strategies. We help families with their money and multiple pillars of income planning, risk planning, emergency money planning, investment planning, retirement planning, estate planning, tax planning. Kind of all those things kind of go hand in hand. And also that's, we are a sounding board. That should be a pillar in itself, is being a pillar, someplace that you can go and have discussions and have a sharing of ideas and bounce ideas and what you're thinking about now and the future. regarding family transitions and losing a loved one, and having those resources and help through that. That's the kind of things we do. And if that sounds of something you'd like to learn more about, go to GregoryRicks.com, email info@GregoryRicks.com, call the office. And look, we work with families across the country. That's what technology allows us to do. If you want to do a Zoom meeting, we're absolutely prepared and fine with that. We do those often, but we also have in-person visits in Metairie, Louisiana, Mandeville, Louisiana, and Gulfport, Mississippi. And on the website has the addresses and stuff of those offices. And if you go on the website, you can check out our team and look at the staff that we have. And I think it's important to be able to visit an office and make sure they are successful. If you're working with somebody that comes by your house, do you really know what's going on with them? Yeah, they're nice. They're coming by your house, but have you been to their office? Do they look like it's taken care of, up to date, organized, looks successful? I think those are little things that you should be aware of. And I also think if you're relying on just one person as your advisor, and most of the industry is operated this way, basically with advisors with no assistants or an advisor with an assistant. Well, we've got a firm that has you with a team of people at all times, and you're not reliant on just one person. And I think that's important, and we're going to continue working on evolving that. And I think it's so old school to think that you're going to work with one person versus having a team of people to take care of you and that you can rely on. And that should be an expectation. So once again, if you're looking to start a conversation, 504-832-9200 is the phone number. It doesn't matter where you live, where you want to meet at. There's one number to call, just like there's one website, GregoryRicks.com. So reach out to us. Even if you just want to have an exploratory conversation, we'll schedule a 15-minute call to start that conversation as well. Non-threatening. If you kind of say, well, look, I've heard enough, I've listened for a while, been needing to know this, you can just go ahead and plan a visit. And how that starts too is we schedule that for 60 minutes. We have a little bit of wiggle room. If the meeting finishes earlier, we're fine with that. If it runs a few minutes longer, we're okay with that. But that's kind of what we schedule it for. It's not an afternoon. And I promise you, you get in there, they're not going to keep you for 2 or 3 hours because it's scheduled for an hour. So we have a little bit of wiggle room. If the conversation runs a little bit longer by maybe 10 minutes, we can keep you there. But that's going to be the extent of it because we're business where business is being done. We're an advisory firm where people are coming in for meetings, and we have our calendars are specific and full throughout the day. So it's not like you have an unlimited visit. And I think that's good because, once again, I don't want to wear you out. I don't want my advisors to wear you out. I think if you've had a 60-minute conversation, that's probably enough to take in, and we need to move to that next step, schedule that next visit, schedule that next conversation, and continue that. I think those are very important concepts. You haven't got to worry about, well, how the heck am I getting out of this meeting? Because that's kind of a fear. And one thing we do at the meetings, we kind of let you know, there's an agenda we cover and let you know what we're covering in this visit and how long this visit's going to last. And there's going to be somebody knock on the door, which is an indication of how much time is left. And then there'll be somebody knock on the door, help the team wrap up that meeting. But they're letting you know at the start of how long it's going to last. Because one of your fears, and I said, this is really important concept because, if you, and I kind of, and this is not to hate on car dealers. Look, I sold cars back when I was in college as well. But one of the fears people have, and I've experienced this, is I go to want to look at a car and I feel like, well, hell, I can't get out of this meeting. You know what? I'm not interested. I'm ready to leave, and it seems like it takes forever. We don't want you to have that feeling or that worry. So people say, well, I'm going to end up going to an advisory firm and talking to a salesperson. You better not have that vibe at our office, and that's not your fault. We better not give you that vibe. But I promise you ain't got to have that fear, like, how am I going to get out of there? You simply can leave anytime you want, but that meeting is only going to last about 60 minutes. So you will be getting out. Nobody's going to force you to sign a document or make you do anything. We're a place where business is being done, and we don't have to have you as a client for us to be successful. We already are. And we work with thousands of families and counsel many others as well. So just hopefully giving you some insight there to that. I want to, before I run through my next topic here, I know I kind of went off on a tangent, but I just think those concepts are important for you to understand, and you're probably not getting that type of vibe elsewhere as you can with what we're doing here. But I want to mention a number of show sponsors that make Winning at Life possible. Dwayne Stein of Mortgage.com fame, host of Mortgage Gumbo, the radio show. Jude Heath of J. Heath Company CPAs, so we work together on clients as well, and he's a show sponsor. Wesley Blanchard of W.J. Blanchard Law. There's some estate planning being done there. JJSaudiovideo.com, 504-638-0906. I consider him a friend, but he handles audio, video, security systems, my personal, as well as for our offices. Great guy. I have a problem or need something fixed, he answers the phone whenever I call him there. Let's see. iHeartMedia is another important sponsor. NewOrleans.mosquitojoe.com. I bet you hate mosquitoes as much as I do. Great service to help keep those critters away and leave you alone so you can enjoy your outdoors at your properties. Patali's Deli and Catering in Metairie, Louisiana. Gregory Ricks and Associates, the Total Wealth Authority. And I've got another one. iHeartMedia. Did I mention them? We wouldn't be on air without iHeartMedia. And I was thinking about this. Pat Huber over at FirstSouthFarmCredit.com. We'll call him up next week and get him to guest as on one of our segments. Their number is 985-748-8655. Any of these that make this show possible, you reach out to them. Just tell them Gregory sent you as well. So let's see. My next topic here. Are you ready for your first year of retirement? And this is kind of that big thing, is that retirement's coming up. Do you just step right off into retirement? I think not. Sometimes it's forced upon you, and it could be your company transitioned you out, the company closed, or you just had enough. Sometimes those things can abruptly happen. But I think you should be, whatever that window is, I believe there's some 5-year window that you should start having a conversation. Even if you think you're short, you should start having that conversation. Are you ready for your first year of retirement? Let me make sure I've got the article here. And this is a MoneyWise article. Let's see, I always like to give credits where I kind of gather information. And gosh, I don't see an actual author listed here, but it's a MoneyWise article that was put out in April of this year. But 5 things you might not see coming, but you definitely need to be ready for. You prepare for retirement your whole life, maybe as far back as your teenage years and your first paycheck. We should all be that fortunate, right? That we started planning that far back. And if you did, you're in great shape because you've created some compounding over the years. But according to an April 2025 study by Northwestern Mutual, Americans believe they need around 1.26 million for a comfortable retirement. While this figure is 200,000 less than what was reported last year, 25% of Americans say they have 1 year or less worth of income in retirement savings. Yikes. Even with decades of planning and saving, surprises are likely to come your way that first year of retirement. Here's 5 strategies for retirees. First is get ready for an adjustment period. Even if you have a smart plan for retirement, there's still an adjustment period where leaving the labor force means far less money coming in than more going out. Let's face it, pre-retirement habits and assumptions can be difficult to change. One of the things is kind of start doing a test. If you know your income's going to be going down in a few years because transition to retirement while working, can you run a test there, start living within those means? Can you kind of make sure you make those changes? Make sure you look over your budget before you retire, not after. Remember, in one of our exploratory visits, say that first visit, that's kind of what we're looking for. Do you know what your monthly expenses are? Do you know how much you have coming in every month? That'll probably be a homework piece that you'll be asked to do for visit 2 or in between visit. Crunching these numbers might feel overwhelming, especially if it looks like you're going to have to make some big changes to your lifestyle. And I know this is kind of something that could cause people to stop, not want to do it, or kind of like, oh, I don't want to deal with that. I'm afraid of what I might find out. Do the things you fear. The death of fear is certain. Take that step anyhow. Even if you don't want to know that, take that step. So crunching these numbers, once again, might feel overwhelming, especially if you're going to have to make some big changes. So it's a smart idea to sit down with a financial advisor and start looking at your situation. It's good to start having those conversations because you can have those over a period of time. Retirement's 5 years out, 8 years out, 10 years out, or 2 years out. But you need to start having those conversations. Even if I've had this, I don't ever plan to retire. I had somebody tell me that years ago, and they came in but wanted to start having a conversation about investing and how things look. And a few weeks later, the person called me back and said, you know, Gregory, maybe in 7 years, think about it, that. And I said, you know, actually, I'm already ahead of you. I started looking at those options for you. And even a shorter period, in the reality, that person that was never planning to retire, that then asked to think about 7 years out, actually retired 4 years later. So it's important to take stock of where you're at. Make sure your loved ones are protected. No one ever feels ready to start thinking about life insurance, but the truth is the younger you are when you purchase a policy, the lower your premiums will be. Life insurance can be used by your loved ones to make up for lost income, pay outstanding debts, cover unexpected expenses, and pay for funeral costs. I think this is important to think along that process, because whether you've not reached retirement, or you're in your 30s, or you're close to retirement, or you've just gotten into retirement, what if a death occurs? What are the impacts of that? You might not think about that, but we're thinking about that. Next is have a Social Security strategy. If you take your Social Security starting at 62, you're going to miss out on additional funds you'd reap at a later retirement age, according to the Social Security Administration. If you wait to 66, Social Security calculates that you'd receive $1,000 instead of $750. Further, you could receive delayed retirement credit should you wait until full retirement age, which stops when you reach 70. This needs to be done planning. This is for a household. How do I equate it? I think for both of you, the value of that decision in income, it's $1 million decision. That's the value of that decision. It's that big. And should you just do it on the fly, go online and search and use an online you need to be talking about an advisor that talks with your entire plan. It's a giant decision. Next, that's important, is prioritize your expenses. You want to travel? Could be expensive. You got to factor in food, lodging, flights, frequency of trips. You want to renovate your home or buy a seaside getaway. Sometimes that discussion is, I want to get a motorhome in retirement. I don't know. I'm telling you, I don't buy into that. That's not necessarily my thing. But it falls in there with somebody doing traveling and going to Europe and all. Those are expensive. Well, having a motorhome's expensive. So you need to look at these things that you're wanting to do and how does that factor in to retirement and what are those costs. And at some point, you want to unwind those retirement decisions or that second home or that lake home or that vacation spot you're buying into to go to every year. So what is your exit from doing that? What is your cost of getting in? What are you budgeting that in? Is that going to hurt retirement as well? And I always kind of go to younger Gregory wouldn't have thought that. Gregory now thinks about things from the foreseeable future, but 10 years from now, 15 years from now, I'm going to think about things differently than what I would do now, or wonder why I did that. Glad I can unwind it, or why didn't I do that? So that's what we got to be and have discussions thinking about that going forward. And the last thought I've got here is keep adding to your savings. Once it's time to retire, many folks throw their savings plan out the window of the cruise ship or dream home. That's the wrong way to go. Saving not offers a buffer, but also a means to make even more aspirations possible. You shouldn't. Here's the ultimate: is your savings and wealth continues to grow through retirement. That'd be the ultimate. Is that possible that you can save money if you deplete emergency savings? Can you build it back up? As an instance. So you look at retirement income that you've transitioned to, can a portion of that be set aside for savings? I would not give up that savings thinking in retirement. We would like that to keep going as well. Hopefully that helps you a great deal, and we'll put that article up on the website at gregoryricks.com on the website. I've had this on my mind, and I'm here looking on my computer, medicare.gov/health drug plans. I want you to be thinking about Medicare and the opportunity and open enrollment, and even if you're transitioning, to make sure you're understanding your choices. I know it's complicated. You could go online and do it, but we have a team of people at Gregory Ricks and Associates. Reach out to us, gregoryricks.com, and we'll get you some help there. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back. More of Winning at Life.